right. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle Friedman, and I am a life coach working specifically with women over the age of 50. That is my specific niche. I've been coaching for over 14 years, and I also run another business. But tonight I'm going to talk specifically about what I do, which is, as I said, is empowering women and helping them to really blossom and thrive even after the age of 50, because a lot of people feel that, it's particularly when they get into retirement age or retirement, that it's all over for them. And it's in actual fact the contrary, because you can really thrive and grow and blossom from this age onwards. Today, I'm very honored to have with me, who I'm going to be interviewing, a beautiful lady by the name of Karen Tsafrir. Karen is the founder, and the owner of Live Productions, No Ordinary Event. And she is an event planner. And Karen has had a very interesting few years of experience, and she's going to tell us more about it. So, Karen, I'd like to introduce you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words and your lovely introduction. So, yes, I'm an event planner.
Background about who you are and what you do, and then we'll get more into the interview stuff.
Sure. So I came on Aliyah when I was 17 in 1980. You can do the maths. Got a cat that is going to wiggle my screen. Let me get rid of her. Okay, not going to get rid of her. And I've been in the event business for 23 years, 24 years. This summer actually will be 24 years. It wasn't my first big job, but it was my first company that I opened independently. It was the first time I became self-employed. So that's quite a long time ago, and some interesting challenges along the way. So not being a regular event planner, but being an event planner that is focused on the event industry for incoming tourism. So mostly for British clients, but also Americans and South Africans and some Europeans too. Naturally, I wasn't very favorably affected by COVID. I understand that most people in Israel who have small businesses were not particularly affected well by COVID, but I think I got hit very badly, and I got hit very fast because my clients were mostly incoming. And COVID broke out in February, and in March we closed the airport. So once the airport was closed, effectively my business was shut down. And in the 2.5 years, I don't know, I lost several 100,000 shekels worth of events because people couldn't even come into the country. So when events were still happening in Israel, and you could do weddings of 200 people, and then 100 people, and then 50 people, and then 20 people, and then 12 people, and it did decrease over time. But my clients couldn't even come into the country. So I think that was the first time that I kind of did a big pivot. And then, well, now we're at war, so I'm pivoting again. So I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about my pirouettes and pivoting without being a ballet dancer.
How old were you when you started your first, when you really got into event planning and you said that your first
well, if I'm going to tell you my age, and if we do the maths, so I'll be 62 this year, and I've been in the business about 24 years. So I would have been just coming up to 40, I think. So the first year or two was very slow. I didn't do a lot of events, but after about, I would say, 1.5 years, the business really kicked off. So maybe I was, around 40, newly divorced, all happening.
So that was when it all started really for you.
Yeah.
And what did you do in England beforehand, or in Israel beforehand, before you went into the event business?
I had a lot of jobs, but the biggest jobs that I had, and the jobs that I had exactly before I opened my own event, were in and around hospitals. So I have a master's in public health, and I was marketing director of Asuta Hospital, which was a very big job. I was on the board of directors. I was responsible for the introduction of new medical technologies. I was responsible for bringing in new doctors to the hospital. It's when I worked there, I didn't yet belong to Kupat Cholim Maccabi, and it was primarily profit motivated and just seeing private clients and less Kupot Cholim clients.
Wow.
And I was there for about 5 years.
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic. Okay. And then you decided to go into the event planning business, and where have you done events? I mean, is it only Israel, or have you done overseas as well? Have you done in other places? Where, how?
Yeah, I've done overseas as well. So one that you might appreciate was a 4-day bar mitzvah in Kruger Park in a place called Sabi Sands, which was a stunning bar mitzvah for a South African family who are actually based in the UK that had elderly grandparents who couldn't travel. And so the bar mitzvah was brought there. And we stayed in the most beautiful place, a place called Lion Sands in Sabi Sands. It was a small bar mitzvah, about 50 guests. Some flew in from Israel, some from the UK, and some were locals from South Africa. And we actually, I built the bar mitzvah ceremony in a tree house. So there were like lions and tigers walking underneath us when we had the bar mitzvah, which was lots of fun. I could show you pictures of that later.
Wow.
Done weddings in London. I've done events in New York. I've done corporate in Thailand and in the United Arab Emirates, in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. I took a big group of Israelis. I think that's it.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to doing a whole lot more. That's a little bit of my pivot to come.
That's interesting. Okay. So taking that into account, and then COVID hit you, and then what did you do for COVID? What happened?
I think that I was very lucky that I realized very fast, A, that I was going to be particularly hard hit compared to other people, other party planners in my industry who were doing Israeli events. And B, maybe because I have a master's in public health, and also maybe because I watch a lot of Netflix, but I kind of guessed that it was a pandemic that wasn't going to last 3 or 4 weeks. And at the end of March, I started sending out CVs, and I looked just for any job, secretarial or, being a PA to somebody. And I was offered a job as office manager of a chiropractic in Ramat Aviv. So I went back to my old history of being a medical secretary, which is what I did to put myself through university. And I did it for 2.5 years, part-time. He was considered an essential worker. So we had those passes in our phone. And when everybody else was locked down, I was going to Tel Aviv twice a week and managing the chiropractic actually in Ramat Aviv. So
at least you got out during that time, not like the rest of us who couldn't go less.
So I was going out, and also I did events for Israelis. I did very small, very high-end, intimate events in all sorts of interesting places, mostly in people's back gardens, not in their own back gardens, although I did a couple of events in their own back gardens too. But because I live in Ein Sarid, which is a moshav, and a lot of people have got beautiful back gardens, I actually reached out to some people that I knew not very well, but remembered that they had huge gardens, and I started doing events in Ein Vered, which is our neighboring moshav, and can share some of those pictures too. I did some beautiful events in someone's back garden. He has this little natural rainwater pool, which is a bit like a mikveh, and a whole forest at the back of the garden, and it just looks like Florence. Looks beautiful venue. And I used his garden. I must have done 5 or 6 little weddings there.
When you say little, how many people? Like 20 people?
I think the biggest wedding that I did during that time was about 60 people. And I sat them in clusters. So even though we were outside, we used very colorful flags, and I put clusters together. And the clusters were formed of families who were interacting with each other anyway. So it was very, very conscious of distancing, We had alcohol at the entrance. And another event that I did on the beach, we actually did on the spot COVID tests. And somebody tested positive, a soldier tested positive who was a family member, and we sent him home. So yeah, and that was also an outdoor event, but at, you know, at the time, and especially at the beginning of the pandemic, we were all behaving like it was
Worst thing ever.
Leprosy or something super contagious that you're all going to die of. Remember, we used to go to the supermarket with gloves, and later on we became more lax. But I did events throughout that time with all sorts of interesting limitations and weird behaviors that, looking back on it, was quite odd.
Yeah, different times. And what about, you also did in your own garden, didn't you? No, one wedding.
I did weddings in my own garden. I still offer my garden as a place for brides to get ready, my garden and my house. So I have every now and then a bride who will come in with her makeup artist and her photographers and her best mate, and I'll do a breakfast for them. And I have a nice house and a very pretty garden, and so good places for photo shoots. I'm not going to take you upstairs, but I have a 4-poster bed and a Victorian bath with legs. And so Israeli brides like to throw themselves all over the place and use all of that for back shots. So I still do that. And my garden, the wedding that I did was, I think there were about 50 or 60 people, and I have a vine. So they actually got married under the vine. It's like a sukkah with grapes hanging down. And
very nice, lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, and then October the 7th, unfortunately, happened for all of us here in Israel.
So, well, the COVID ended, and then there was a mad rush of events. All the people that had been on hold just jumped on the wagon, and I was flooded with work, thank God, which was amazing. And even when we weren't sure if the airport would stay open, and also there was a risk that when you flew in, that you would be tested at the airport and then sent straight into quarantine. And can you imagine if a bar mitzvah comes, you know, a whole group of people come for a bar mitzvah, 100 people, and if they're tested at the airport and then the boy turns out to be positive. And so there were all sorts of things towards the end that were still a challenge. And then I went full back into loads and loads of work. Yeah, and then, well, October 7th, there's not a lot to say about October 7th. I had 4 bar mitzvahs that were scheduled in October. They were all cancelled. So that was about 100,000 shekels that flew out of the window. And, you know, just like with COVID, you know where it starts, but you never know where it's going to end. And so I went back to managing the back clinics, which is where I was during COVID, but in a different branch. So I'm back working there. I'm actually now managing 4 branches in the same chain. So I'm managing an osteopathic practice in Ra'anana and 3 chiropractors, one in Tefen in the north, one in Modi'in, and one in Jerusalem. They're all part of the same chain. Yeah. So I'm doing that. I work with lovely people. It's so not my dream job. You know, to go from weddings to back pain it's not that zelozeh, as we would say, but it's income, and I can't not have income. So I'm grateful and glad and wake up every morning and bless the people that gave me a job and trusted me with their 4 clinics. And so I do that. And in the interim, I am back with more ideas, looking for things that will not be so susceptible to things that are not in my control. So 1, pandemics, and 2, war, obviously things not in my control. And I've been thinking about ways that I can take my skills and my experience and divert them to a place temporarily, or maybe not temporarily, but to a place where I won't be affected by things that happen in Israel. And it's, you know, a place with a lot of challenges. We know what's here today, but we don't know what's here tomorrow. Absolutely.
So where would you be looking? Are you talking in Israel or out of Israel?
So I have two things that I'm cooking at the moment, and that I'm weighing up between them I'm not sure yet which direction I'm going in, so I'll tell you briefly about both. The first thing that I started thinking about was an interesting idea, and as far as I know, there's no competition at all in Israel, to start a small company called The Agency. And the agency will provide services, almost every service that you could dream up, for newly separated people, newly single people. So actually not separated. So not only for divorcees who find themselves without partners to support them, but also for widows and widowers. Top end for people who are used to paying other people to do things for them. Every service that you can imagine for a couple. And I had started off saying I would do it for men, thinking that men are useless. But when I talked to friends of mine, I have a lot of friends, women, who are in high-techy jobs, and their husbands have been the stay-at-home dads. And the women are just as useless as the men in this case. I mean, high-powered, doing all sorts of amazing and impressive job, but no idea how to use a washing machine. So I decided to go, not to limit myself to newly single men, but just newly single people. And the service would be, if any of you are divorced ladies, think of something that you or separated or newly single, anything that you would have been challenged with when you found yourself in that position. So it might be finding a cleaner and making sure that the cleaner does a good job, but it also might be finding a mortgage consultant, or it might be having a meal cooked for you in your house because you're inviting a new boyfriend or a new girlfriend back to your house for the first time, but you've never been in the kitchen, you don't know how to cook, and you want to impress whoever it is who's coming for dinner with a fancy meal. So a lot of the suppliers are people that I've already worked with in the event business, and kind of pulling together people who I've worked with in the past to provide services for different jobs.
Which is amazing, because you're taking the resources that you've already got and using them in a different way and with the people you already know. But are you going to restrict yourself only to the single people? What about a married couple that want to have a dinner party and are looking for a chef?
That's something that I do anyway. That would be an existing service in my company, Live Productions, anyway. But obviously, I mean, I have a list of 40 different suppliers who could do anything from butler services to whatever you can dream up. And all of the people that I've worked with in the past, from photographers and musicians to chefs, that's easy for me. But because I belong to networking group two, actually to two networking groups, so I have a lot of connections through my networking too, estate agents and mortgage specialists and lawyers, and
trainers and others, I'm sure.
Coaches and locksmiths and
wow. So you could turn to your resources to help your clients in any way that they need the help. Is that what you say?
Almost don't need to source any kind of supplier for providing a service that I haven't provided before. So obviously I've never recommended, well, I probably have recommended mortgage consultants, but it's not exactly my field of expertise. That because I've come across these people and worked with them or heard recommendations about them, I wouldn't hesitate in recommending them again. The easy part is to refer people and to give work to people that I've worked with. The harder part is to source people that I haven't interacted with so much. But it hasn't been a challenge, and I have a really big list of potential suppliers for needs that somebody might come up with.
So when you mentioned about the services that you already have in your company, what kind of services are there?
So everything in event production. So from people who do branding and graphic design and print, to florists and space designers, and interior designers and musicians, DJs and singers and bands and instrumentalists, to stills photography and video photography and magnet photography, and personal chefs and catering companies and waiters and runners. And for the people who are less conservative in their events, who want to bring in spray paint artists who will spray paint caricatures on t-shirts, or if it's a bar mitzvah, a bravery corner where I bring in snakes and tarantulas and giant lizards and cockroaches, if that's your thing. Not so much mine, but you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised what people want. So, I mean, over the years, I've had some very strange requests from people of what they think they would like to have at an event. And normally, you know, like I say, if you've got enough money, I can make the moon shine for you on a cloudy day.
Well, that's brilliant to know. That's brilliant to know. Okay, so what's the other idea that you have in mind?
So the other pivot is closer to home, and I'm turning that into action now. So I'm very excited about it. I think that I sat down and I had this idea, okay, I'm challenged again. Live productions is not at work. What can I do? What's my field of experience? Where am I comfortable? Where am I not comfortable? And I kind of made a list of things before I thought about the agency even. And the first question I asked myself, what's the problem with my company? What's the problem with live productions? So the problem with live productions is that it's based on incoming tourism. I think if I had just been a regular Israeli party planner doing work across Israel, private or corporate, I would be less challenged than I am today. But because in all of those 20 odd years that I've been at work, 99% of my clients have been people who don't live in Israel, people who come in, celebrate and go. I've been so adversely affected twice. So the first question I asked myself, what's the problem? The problem is I'm focused on people coming from out of Israel into Israel. So then I thought, okay, I love doing weddings. I love doing events. I know how to work out of Israel because I've done events out of Israel. What's close by and what can I do there? So, you know, all Israelis love going to Greece and Paphos and Larnaca and Nicosia, and it's quite popular now. So I thought that I will develop events in Paphos and Larnaca. Both of them have airports that you can get to from all over Europe and from Israel. From here, the flights are cheap.
It's a 45-minute flight.
It's a 45-minute flight and it's a cheap flight. Even now when flights are expensive because there's no charter, the flight to Larnaca is $120. So it's a cheap flight. So it's feasible to take 100 people there or 200 people there from Israel. And there's a Chabad in Larnaca. So it's possible to do kosher events. And I've kind of opened it. So although I'm a Jewish Israeli event planner, in Larnaca, I'm planning to do just weddings or anything else that anybody wants me to ask. So it will be divided to two. It will be Jewish events with the option, obviously, of a kosher caterer with a Teudat Kashrut and a Chabad rabbi because there's a Lubavitch house there. But at the same time, I'm thinking, why limit myself to the Jewish community? You know, Greek is full of little Greek Orthodox churches and chapels and all very picturesque and white and blue like Mykonos and Santorini. So I think I'm just going to put myself out there to do all kinds of weddings and not only Jewish weddings. So I've never done a non-Jewish wedding, but I guess it's not very different, except instead of a rabbi, there's a vicar or somebody or a priest, who knows.
Right. So that could be very interesting. That could be very, very interesting.
So I'm actually on a flight to Larnaca on Saturday night, this coming Motzei Shabbat. And I've reached out to a couple of photographers who specialize in wedding photography and asked them to show me as many venues as possible. I'll be there for 4 days on this trip. And I've also asked for permission to share some of the photographs of the photographers. So I thought about who would be the best person to reach out to. And the best person to reach out to probably would have been another party planner, but they may see me as competition, whereas the wedding photographers and the video photographers see me as potential more work. So I think they're more willing to cooperate, but I've had really nice response from them. And yeah, so I'm off to Larnaca on Motzei Shabbat, and I've got Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I'll come home on Wednesday. 3 days of intense venue hopping.
Fantastic. That's really great. And it's so inspiring because it's showing how you turned something really bad into something very positive and something moving forward and helping you to bring in an income. And who knows where this can lead, because you could land up doing both weddings here or functions here in Israel, as well as in Greece and in Cyprus.
Yeah. And there's a very similar vibe to here. I mean, I can do, you know, I've done events in Thailand. I can do events anywhere. I think the biggest challenge is going to be to find, I think Jewish customers I will find equally easily, because I have, funny thing to say, kind of have an international name. So, you know, in England, if anybody wants to do an event in Israel, everybody knows Karen Live Production, especially in London, but also in Manchester. And in the US, I'm less well known, but I've probably done over the years maybe 15 bar mitzvahs for American kids too, bar and not mitzvah. Never done anything for non-Jewish people, private events, corporate, yes, but weddings, a non-Jewish wedding, as I said, I've not done before. And I've never advertised myself in the past. So in all the years of work, it's always been a friend brings a friend, or personal recommendation. You know, if I do a wedding with 200 people, of all the friends of the bride and the groom, there will always be single friends who will get married next year or the year after. And if this flock got married in Israel, the chances are high that they will also want to get married in Israel. So I've never advertised, but I'm thinking of doing specific, you know, very word specific advertising on Facebook and Google, just for events in Larnaca, events in Paphos, and see what that brings.
Well, that's amazing. That's fantastic. Do you want to show us some of the pictures and stuff that you've done? Have you got anything to show us that you could?
Sure. I'm going to show you a couple of bar mitzvahs and some weddings too. I should say that I like to think out of the box. And so quite a lot of my events are actually very out of the box. I'll have to say that as an introduction. And let me share.
That's why events are ordinary events, is your tagline, right? So that makes a lot of sense why it's like that.
So I've just gone to my website because that's the easiest place for me to show you things. And I'm going to show you a couple of bar mitzvahs first. The nice thing about bar mitzvahs is that people are less conservative during a bar mitzvah, so you have more opportunity to do, I think, something not usual. So, oops, jumped a bit fast. Let me go back into this one. It's jumping much faster than I want. Hold on, let me stop for 1 sec. Sorry. See if I can just go back. Not the way I wanted to show it to you. Okay, this is how I wanted to show it to you. So this was the venue. It's underneath Masada. It's called Chavarei Matzada. And as you can see, there's nothing there. The challenge with a venue like this is actually the build. Because there is nothing there, you need to think about the order that you're bringing things in. So for example, I laid staging for the entire event, but once you lay down the staging, you can't bring in the lighting truck, you can't bring in a refrigeration truck. So you have to think very carefully what order you need your supplies to come in order to not put things up and then block yourself. So that was the place. This is when I started laying the stage. It was a 3-day build. And the event was at the end of August. The days were very hot. So it was actually a 3-night build. And the people came in and worked at night. And then I would come in the morning and have a look at it. Let me see if I can show it in a slightly better order. So the layout of the venue, this was actually what you saw when you came in. So the venue was divided up into 3 areas. There was a reception area, and then there was this corridor that led to the dining area. And behind the dining area, there was a dance floor. and in between was an open kitchen. And actually, when the guests came in, they came in on coaches because there was no place to park, 100 cars. And the venue from behind was in darkness. So when they came in, only the reception area was lit and they didn't know what else was waiting for them. Had about half an hour of reception. And then they walked through this series of arches and came to the dining area. And the dining area looked like this.
Wow. Very Middle Eastern, huh?
It was a kind of Moroccan-y feel.
Yeah.
So there were arches on the sides and arches at the end. And if you continue down, what you got to was the open kitchen. And this is what the open kitchen looked like. And what was special about the open kitchen is that it was all live cooking. There was no pre-cooked food. It was restaurant style. So basically, the waiters took your order, and there was fish and chicken and steak, and you could say exactly what you wanted and how you wanted it prepared. And that's what you got. So true restaurant style. And then behind the open kitchen was the dance floor. Let's see if I've got pictures of the dance floor. No, actually, I haven't got pictures here of the dance floor. You can see here what it looks like. It was a very long, narrow venue. I've got pictures of the food. Got pictures of the table setting. And the kind of activities that you would do is this sort of thing: fire jugglers, and games with light, playing with light, because it's in the desert and it's quite dark. So we had 2 fire jugglers. So that's one event that I wanted to share. And I'll show you one other bar mitzvah. Let me go into it. Actually, I'll just go in this way. So probably a lot of you been here. These are the caves of Beit Guvrin. Again, another venue that has absolutely nothing. This was a winter venue, and the tops of the caves are actually, they have holes at the top. So we had to cover the top of the cave that we sat in because there was a chance of rain. But that's what the cave looked like before we got to it. This was the way into the cave. It's a bit small. Let me make it bigger. Let me see if I can make it bigger. This was the way into the cave. So we projected onto the floor. And the reason that I wanted to show you this is because we took the idea of projections into the cave as well. So we lit up all the caves on the way into the cave that we wanted to use. So even caves that we didn't go into, we just put a little bit of lighting inside so that when you walked in and wound your way through the caves, you kind of had hints of lights along the way. And see, there was a red cave there, and there was a blue cave. And then the cave where we had dinner, this was it.
Wow.
So we projected pictures of cave paintings onto the ceilings of the cave. And the table, it's a very special table as well. Let me show you the table. So on the table, we had serviettes that we printed the same cave paintings on a print, and a tablecloth that you can't really see, but it also has the same print that we did on the roof. And we have, I don't know how clear it is. If you see the candles, they're in genuine replicas of the candle holders that the Maccabees used, that they found around the caves of Beit Guvrin. They're all different animals. And at the end of the evening, we told the guests that they were gifts and they could take them home. So it was a very beautiful event. See if there's any else. Yeah. In this picture, you can see, hold on, where the band is. It was an informal, it wasn't seated at tables. People were seated at sofas. And the waiters were wearing jalabiyas, you know, white Muslim gowns. So that's two very different and very special bar mitzvahs. And let me think what weddings I can show you. Hold on. I'm thinking that I'd like to show, hold on, something special. Okay, I'd like to share this one with you. So I had an Australian couple. The bride had a fixation on caves. So we went to look at caves. This is one of the caves we went to look at. This is my cave guide. This is me and this is her. And all the caves that we looked at, they were amazing, a bit like the one that I just showed you, but the access was really difficult. And when we worked out how much money it would cost to build steps to get in, we went way, way, way over budget. But I kept in mind that they really liked caves. Turns out that this guy, who's a cave guide, he had the keys to an old Crusader. It's not a dig because nobody dug it up. The old walls of an old Crusader inn, very close to where the caves were. So what you'll see is pictures of us looking at the caves, intertwined with pictures of the wedding day. The bride and groom went back to the caves just for photo shoots, and then the actual Crusader place and what we did to it. So this is them at the same cave. Make it a bit bigger. That's them on their wedding day, visiting the same cave. And then, let's see, the Crusader Castle. So on the same day, oh, is it not coming up? So that's the bride in what's left of the Crusader Khan, or Khan in Hebrew. And this is an illustration, not this one, sorry. This.
Oh, wow.
This is, so the walls are exactly as the walls were, and this is an illustration. This was the plan that we built together before we actually did the event. So I had all the measurements of the venue. I knew how many guests we had. I put in where we would put the generators, where we'd put in mobile toilets, where the chuppah would be. And this was the picture they got so that they could picture what it would look like. And then, what did it look like? It looked like this.
Okay.
So that was it in daylight before the guests came. We started setting up at 5 in the morning. I'm going to have a catwalk in front of me. Let me show you what the decoration on the tables was. Hold on, that's the chuppah. Here's another view of the tables. Also before we finished setting up, so you can see the chairs are not in place. But the decoration on the table, I think, was very appropriate. There was some antique books, some brassy vases, just some greenery down the middle of the table, and some candles. We kept it very, very simple because it was kind of Crusader style, I would say, if you had to choose a word to describe what it felt like.
Beautiful.
And okay, this is an aerial picture of the space. So I had the measurements just to show you some of the challenges when you do a space that's not a venue and you want to know how much space you have. This is another picture of what it looked like not set up. So we had to cut the grass, and underneath was a lot of rocks. And I said that they had been in the caves, right? So this is a picture of them. not on their wedding day in the cave. And this is a picture of them in the same spot on the day of their wedding. So they kind of revisited everything that they had liked but couldn't afford to do inside the cave. Another picture of the table setting. Not sure if I've got internet issues. Not very typical wedding-y, I would say, but very lovely. I can show you pictures until, you know, the end of time, and I don't want to bore you. Maybe
just one more, which is more like an unusual
one more wedding that is a traditional wedding. This one, traditional because there's traditional venues, but I think probably not at all traditional looking. So this is a wedding where the chuppah was in the old port of Jaffa. And so it was a very Greek or Roman style chuppah with very, very tall, way taller than a normal chuppah, with a Greek, I guess, or Roman columns. I don't know enough about archaeology to tell you if they were Greek or Roman, but that was the look of the chuppah. And so you can see where it is. I don't know if you recognize it. It's just the southern side of the old port, and beyond the walls there are all the restaurants, and it's just at the edge of where the antiquities are. And I want to show you what was really lovely about this event. Afterwards, we went to Bayar Hadera on coaches, where we had dinner and dancing. So the chuppah was in one place, and then we moved somewhere else. And what I loved about this event, it's not at all traditional colors, not at all a white wedding. Every single table was different. So this is one table. But we also had tables where we had stuff hanging down. I think it was particularly beautiful. Let's find a picture.
It's in the back there.
This one. So we built structures on the table, and then we hung things over the table, and candles and lights were hanging down as well. Really nice color scheme.
Yeah.
This was a very simple wedding that I had seen there once, and I took a picture of the chuppah and the 12 chairs, and then I compared it to this very English wedding where obviously every single guest is seated, and a lot of attention to every chair with its ivy and its fan and its kippah and all the rest of it.
Time of the year was that? It was in summer.
August.
August, so summer.
August wedding. Yeah. So you need to tell me to stop, because I can go on and on and on and on, and everyone is very, very different. So
okay, I think this is fantastic, and I really wish you lots of luck with both the agency and with your ventures in Greece and Cyprus. I hope they all come off. I think that it's been very, very inspiring to hear how somebody who didn't just was stuck in two different situations, both very, very serious, and yet didn't like raise your hands and say, I can't do this, or I'm not interested, or you know, what am I going to do, and poor me, and go down that path, but rather to say, okay, what can I do? Looked at your skills and took them in a different path, in a different way, which is going to bring in an income, and who knows where this is going to lead going into the future. It could be into a lot more, because you could end up running two businesses where you could be doing the event planning on the one hand and running the agency on the other hand, with giving services here and there and everywhere for various different people. So
I do never complain that I have too much work.
No, for sure not. And you know, you have to be a hard worker to be able to do what you do. Like you said, the one function you were already setting up at 5 a.m. So it kind of shows that, you know, there's no 9 to 5 here at all.
No.
And I think this is incredible what you've achieved and what you're going to achieve, and I wish you lots of luck with it. And I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Anybody wants to ask any questions to Karen or me, with pleasure, please do. You can all unmute yourselves now and be available to ask any questions. Anybody got any questions? No?
I overwhelmed you. I bombarded you with pictures.
I think so. I think so.
Yeah, Michelle, just it's not a question, but it's just incredible. Your work is incredible. You know, like when you said about events, I was thinking, you know, a wedding and what that, but I think what it highlights is the attention to detail and how particular that you know, like those details make and add to the event. So it's not just an event, it's an incredible experience of every sense. You know, sound, sight, feel, it just amazing. So thank you for sharing. Because, you know, like I'm a nurse and do nursey things and think about things that are clinical and things like that. But it's such a joy to see creativity in a way in which just brings to life someone's most memorable experience that they're going to have, whether it's whatever event it is. But so thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such a lovely thing to say. Thank you.
Yeah. And as you can hear from Addison's beautiful accent that she's from Scotland. So you could end up doing events in Scotland at some stage in the future. You never know.
Yeah. Edinburgh Castle would be a good place to start.
Right. Okay. And Liz is from New Zealand. So Liz, any comments you want to make? Unmute yourself.
Yeah. I would ditto Alison, and honestly, Karen, just really genuinely, I'm going to look here, I'm really inspired by you. And what I noticed is I couldn't think of anything worse. You know, event, just a dinner for me drives me crazy, but your inspiration for yourself, like the excitement that I've gone tingly, the excitement, you can see it in you and feel it in you. And it's almost like this desire for you to want to create something for somebody else. And incredible, all the levels, like what's possible has blown my mind. But your delight in it as well. And you said early on that when you were pivoting about, and it's really landed for me for some reason, is how it's really important to know what it was that works for you, that, you know, your fire is around and what doesn't. And there's just, yeah, very inspiring, blown away, like Alison, and just thank you so
much.
I feel in my heart no matter what you do. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Thank you.
And what also, Liz, another thing that Karen does is that she also does corporate events, which you spoke about very briefly, but it could be 3, 4, 5, 6-day events where every like meal is taken into account, every tour is taken into account. And then so it's all the tiny little things about when is the bus going to arrive and when it's going to leave and what they're going to do and the photographer, etc., etc. Am I correct, Karen, in what I'm saying?
Yeah. I've had some funny challenges along the way. It's a whole nother chapter, but I had one event where everything happened very late and I had to move a tent and everything was held up, again, things that were not in my control at all. But I had guests who were headed out for us and we weren't ready for them. And I had to stop them from coming because we weren't ready. So I called the bus and I said, break down. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, do you understand the Hebrew? Kilutatzor, break down. He said, what's the problem? I said, I need you to stop somewhere, say the engine is overheated. I need you to break down near a petrol station, buy them all soft drinks, that I needed that extra hour. And then I said, order another bus, do whatever you want, whatever it costs. And he said, no, I'll say that the engine is overheated. So this so-called overheated engine, he stopped for an hour, he let the engine cool down. And by the time, I sent him another message, okay, you can bring them. No sign of all the challenges that I'd had before the bus turned up. Sometimes you need to be ready for things that are not in your control.
But I think that your title, your tagline that you have, I mean, you call yourself one thing, and then you use the no ordinary events, like live productions is what the name of the company is, but the no ordinary events really describes how you go out of your way and how much more you put into everything that you do. And as you said, think out of the box, which is fantastic. Fantastic. Anybody else got any comments or anything that they want to contribute or say? No?
I've just got one more thing.
Sure.
Just noticing, Karen, when you were saying about that situation about breaking down, that I wonder in the event, in the world that you work in, how much of that maybe helped you in your life as well. The problem solving, you don't know what's coming, and the resilience of that.
I think
very good point.
It's an interesting question. I think that it kind of goes the other way. I think that because I am naturally a laid back person, and because also I'm a Virgo, which means that I'm very, very detail oriented. And I think the third part of that is that I only work with suppliers that I completely trust. So I think the combination of being quite laid back, being very detail oriented, and working with people I trust means that if the whole world was crumbling around me, I would still be there chilled and pulling it all together, and nobody around would know. You wouldn't see it on my face, even if there was really difficult things going on in the background. So I think it's, yeah, and I guess it's a skill that you can take with you everywhere. I'm very bossy, forever telling people what to do. Come here, go there, do this, put that up there. And everything that I do is an event.
But then at the end of the day, when you think about it, what comes out of everything, that every client that you have has got to be 100% happy with what they're getting, because you've really gone over and beyond with what you offer, what you give, and the service that you give to your clients.
Well, I think it's one of the things that I say to my clients when they ask me, do you think it's going to be okay? Or do you think the supplier is okay? And I say to them, God willing, this will be your only wedding, and you won't need to think about another wedding. But every wedding I do is a showcase for the next wedding I'm going to do. And because I don't advertise, and because I depend on my clients being happy and recommending me to their friends, for me, it's even more important that their wedding is perfect than it is for them, if that's possible, because I've got 300 other people at this wedding who are all potential clients. If I don't do a good job, I haven't done anybody any favors. So I care at least as much as the bride and groom, if not more.
Fantastic. And I think it's the fact that you've been able to adapt and change and pivot and do what needs to be done in order to keep yourself going, to bring in an income. And as you said, you don't care what it was being an office manager or being a secretary or doing other things in between, wherever it is. Nothing too small or nothing too big is there for you to do. You're happy to go ahead and do whatever it is in order to bring in that income, and also to think out of the box about what can I do? What can I take from my skills and talents and turn it around into something more important that can bring me another form of income? And look what's happened now that, thanks to the situation at the moment, if we can really put it that way, which I mean, it's an awful situation to be in. But based on that, how it's turned you around now to thinking that maybe you could still be going and doing the weddings in Cyprus and Greece, as you've suggested, but at the same time opening up your business called the agency, which is then allowing you to have another kind of income coming in, and whether it be focusing only on the one or the other doesn't matter, because either way you're earning money and you're doing what you love doing and what you're so good at doing.
Yeah.
I think
I hope so. I hope it all comes together. I'll let you know next week when I come back from Larnaca.
Okay, we'll be in touch. But I'm just saying that for all of us listening to you, this is what it is. It's like to take whatever skills and talents we have and to say, okay, fine, what can I do with this, and how can I turn it around for me in a positive way, and take that going forward instead of sitting and feeling sorry for ourselves.
Yeah.
I think is a very, very inspirational thing. So
I have to admit that there was a fair share of I'm feeling very sorry for myself at the beginning of COVID, and about a month of wanting to pull out my hair and cry and all the rest of it. And
we need to release those emotions anyway, and it's very healthy to do that. So it's good, because once you've done that, you were then able to think ahead, and what do I do now?
yeah,
If you hadn't done that, then you would have been stuck in that place, and you wouldn't have been able to move forward.
Yeah.
So, that is fantastic. I really admire you for it. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. I really, really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. And we'll look forward to the next one, which is next month. Thank you. All right.
Thank you very much. Good night.
You.
Bye.